Welcome to the CryptoSphere podcast, where we investigate some of the most influential founders shaping the Web3 ecosystem. From decentralized finance projects to new NFT mints, we cover it all. Here are your hosts, Ryan McNutt and Christopher Reese.
Welcome to CryptoSphere. This is the podcast where you get to choose what we invest in. I'm Ryan.
My name's Chris, and with us is Elliot at Future NFT Mints. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Elliot.
Sure. So I'm Elliot. I created Future NFT Mints just a few months ago. My background is more product, analytics. I right now work at a streaming media company doing product analytics. And I had been following the crypto space for a long time, since 2012. I remember when Mt. Gox, just completely went away with everyone's money. It was around the time I was like, oh, I want to go buy some Bitcoin, and then I was like, oh, well, okay, now I don't know any place to do it. Yeah. And then I was like, oh, I don't want to spend half a day going like coding up a wallet so that I could like have my own custody for it. And I was working on my own stuff, and so I wound up not doing it. And then 2015, 2016, 2017 roll around. I bought a little bit, but not that much.
Oh, nice.
Not that much. But that's when I first started hearing about smart contracts.
Gotcha, yeah.
And I had done some stuff on the legal side throughout my career, and was like, ooh, like that actually is like, that's the thing that makes me most interested.
Yeah.
Is like, you can take this contract, digitally put it on the blockchain in a public place, and then it's going to execute when certain conditions are met. And to me, that was like, boom, that is it. But we weren't there yet, right? The ICO craze happens in 2017, and I'm like, why are people buying these? None of that made sense to me. And so we roll around to the beginning of 2021, and I see Beeple is selling for crazy numbers. I'm like, that's just odd. I didn't fully understand it, right? Art's a great use case for NFTs, but it didn't really suck me in. And so I'd kind of been dancing around the periphery. I was working on a fintech SaaS that I just recently decided to wind down. It's called Plufin, and it was a way for, I wanted to create a personal quarterly report, an annual report. I didn't want to do that for a long time, but it's like, you're really in the weeds, in the details. And so decided, I was building all that, doing all this. It was mind numbing. October comes around, and I'm like, oh, I need a little bit of a break. I've seen I think Lazy Lions was the one that was showing up on my feed so much, and I was like, oh, okay, like I'm kind of curious about like doing some generative art. So I went and downloaded Hashlips on GitHub, and like went and did some generative art. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. And I kept seeing everyone have their ENS .eth, and I was like, oh, you know what? I need to do that. Wait, like this is the first thing that I can actually buy with ETH. Let's do it. And so I do it, and I spent over like $500 in gas. Because I clicked the button extra time. I didn't know. And I was so like I'm playing poker with some buddies, and I was like, okay, fine. I get distracted so easily. And I was like, guys, I'm just going to do this. And I'm like, you have no idea what I'm doing right now, guys. I just spent like $500 on this thing. I don't understand it. Gas, like, I now understood gas is like, what the hell? Like, $150 for each of the times. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do this and I got to pay $150, I don't want to do this again. So I was like, 15 years. Okay, no big deal, because that, it goes from $5 to $75. I was like, no worries. 15 years, pay the $500 or so, probably $550. Took me about an hour to go through the entire thing, and I was really, really annoyed. It was such a bad experience. But I had my ENS, and I changed my name on Twitter, and was like, hey, now I'm a part of the community.
Yeah.
And was like, okay, great. So now what do I do?
Right.
So I'm like, kind of go back and don't do too much. And then November 8th rolls around. This is the ENS airdrop.
Gotcha.
And I really didn't care.
Yeah.
I was
Right.
like, okay, cool. You're doing a snapshot. What does that even mean? Okay, great. You'll have my wallet address. Oh, you're gonna send us tokens? Okay, sure. That's gonna be worth like $50, $100. Like I spent $550 on this thing, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not really worried about your token. Then a buddy of mine reached out on Twitter and was like, hey man, you check how many tokens you got? And I was like, I have no idea. Sends me a link. I put it in. Because I had bought it for 15 years and because I had connected my wallet address, I had 370 something tokens.
Nice.
And I was like, great. So how much do they trade for? Again, thinking, okay, great. Like they're 50 cents, right? It's like
Right.
$150. So I was completely shocked when I looked it up and was like, wait, this is $10,000? I was like, what are you talking about? No, I don't know. It literally took me an hour for me to just kind of wrap my head around what had just happened.
Yeah.
And I was like tweeting, I was like, guys, what, tweeting like, hey, I don't understand this. Tell me what just happened. Explain to me, why did I just get this money? I don't understand this. And it was going crazy that day. It went up to I think $15,000-$20,000. The height, it was worth like 25 or 30. It's now down to like 8 or 9.
Right.
But I was just like, I don't understand this. Well, I'm not gonna sell it. Like, who knows what's gonna happen with it?
Yeah.
Like, it was free basically.
Yeah.
Let's just see what happens.
Yeah.
And so I wind up. I'm going into such a long story here. Sorry.
You're
but
good.
This
This
is
is a great
kind
story.
of this is how I started Future NFT Mints. And so there is this entrepreneur in Austin, an angel investor named Harold Hughes, and I've been following him on Twitter for a while, and I love he has these great insightful posts, and then he has these other ones with his family and of grilling, and he would always grill these incredible cuts of meat, and I was just like, God, I just want to be friends with this guy.
Yeah.
And right around this time he was like, hey guys, nominate me to be your ENS delegate. And I was like, great, this would be a way I can, talk to Harold. He seems like a great guy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Harold, you're my delegate. Didn't cost me anything, right?
Yeah.
A couple days later, I reach out to him on Twitter as my first DM, and I'm like, hey, Delegate Harold, this little message. And I'm like, hey man, this ENS airdrop just happened. I'm now starting to understand, because the best explanation someone gave me was that, look, Web3 is all about community.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about participating. And because you actually came in and spent that ETH, because you participated, because you joined, that's why you got the tokens.
Yeah.
And my mind just blew. I was like, oh my God, that's insane. And the way I describe it to my friends now is that, because when I was in undergrad, that's when Facebook came out.
Yeah.
So think about the first people on Facebook. If you had gotten an NFT for that, or if you had gotten some tokens, and then it just completely went off, I mean, it would have changed our generation.
Oh yeah.
And that's kind of the best. I told a couple people, I think that's the thing that gets through to people my age, is that if you're early in some of these teams, then you potentially can benefit not only financially, but being involved, being able to learn and all that. And so going back to Harold, I'm like, hey man, how do I get more involved? What do I do? I want to, who should I meet in Austin? Tell me.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I just joined this group called CPG Club. Mm-hmm. If you have the liquidity, you should join.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, cool. He sends me a URL. I go and look at it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, Chris Cantino, Jamie Schmidt, they're a founder duo, they're a couple. I've been following them for a few years on Twitter. They had exited their company in the consumer packaged goods space, and now they're doing this crypto packaged goods, right?
Interesting.
Very, very, related.
Yeah.
And then there was all these other people who I just follow on Twitter already, and I was like, wow, this is a great group.
Yeah.
And this is mid-November, And I look at the price. The floor for one of these is like an ETH, and I'm like, you know, big gulp. Like, you know, like I had been saving up money in the event that I go work on Ploufin, on this fintech venture.
Right.
Yeah. And so I had like a year runway set up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it was like this was going to be a good chunk of that runway.
Yeah. Right.
And I agonized for a week of should I do this. And ultimately it was just like, okay, this is an education. This is, you know, me learning from people who are incredibly smart, who know way more than I do, who are probably very connected in the space, and who I could just, you know, ultimately learn from. So I looked at this as like education. Yeah. And I also looked at it as I'm never going to get this money back. Right. Because once I buy this, I don't think I'm ever going to sell it.
Right, right.
And so I wound up buying it, and you know, it was an ETH, and it was my first NFT that I intentionally bought. The ENS is the first NFT, but I didn't know it was an NFT. I didn't really understand that it was in my wallet. Like, none of that made sense to me. So I buy this NFT. I wait a day or two before I join, and I join their Telegram community. It's a token gated community. It was a rush of information. I mean, it was a surge. I got my MBA. I've, you know, gone through a ton of different educational experiences. I learned more in like the first couple weeks than I've like ever learned in my life. Wow. Like it was so fast, and it was so fascinating too. And there's so many people in there, and they're sharing so much stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like my head is exploding. I'm trying to, you know, research, read, understand what's going on. My second day in or third day in, you know, everyone got excited about Pool Suite. And I was just like, okay, like I'm familiar with the brand. I know the radio. I'm familiar with it. This sounds really interesting. Okay, point two. Yeah. Okay, you know, great. I actually my first NFT that I had like meant to try to buy and to sell was this small project called Bad Bromados, and it was on Solana, and it was like 0.1 each, and I was like, great. $20? Yeah. I can do that. No problem. So let's do that. I spend the $20, and I actually clicked the button, and it said, oh, you didn't mint. So I click it again. Oh, you didn't mint. Click it again. Oh, you didn't mint. Or no, finally I minted. And I was like, great. And then I go look at my wallet, and I actually had 2 now.
Oh, shoot.
I accidentally minted twice, and I was like, oh, I didn't mean to spend $40. Yeah. Oh, but, you know, thank God, you know, the transaction was only like a penny, right? Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, here I am, like, okay, I've done my first mint. This is really weird. Like, it was, you know, there's all these emotions. Yeah. And I listed both of them. One of them was more rare, so I was like, 5 sold. Yeah. I don't know what I'm doing. Right. The other one was like half sold. Yeah. Right. Like, who cares? Like, and if that half sold sells, then like, you know, it covers everything plus some profit. Yeah. You know, we're talking about like $100, right? Again, you know, so it's not big money, and someone bought it that day. Oh, and I was like, what is going on here? Like, why did someone just buy this? And so I immediately delisted the other one, and was like kind of annoyed with myself. And you know, I learned from that okay, you can mint it, but like wait to see what happens. Yeah, don't like just sell it immediately. I didn't mean to flip it. Yeah. Because that's actually not who I am as an investor. Value investing has always been something I've been interested in literally since I was like 11, 12. Cool. Like, I've been a huge nerd for a long time. Idolized Warren Buffett before it was like, you know, kind of the cool thing to do. Graham, all those, all those guys, yeah. And so with CPG, right, Pool Suite. And I'm like, okay, great. I've minted something before. Great. You know, I know what I'm doing, kind of. Yeah. Right. And they're all like, hey, like this may go fast. Let's mint from the contract. And I'm like, what? Yeah. What do you mean we're gonna mint from the contract? Don't we just go to a website? Yeah. No. Go to Etherscan. Let's go to the contract itself, and you know, these are the things to input and where to input. And I was like, my God, you guys are way smarter than me. I'm so happy that I'm with you and can learn from you. I minted 2 because I was like, oh, this just seems really cool, and if they're all this excited, like this, you know, this seems like the thing to get 2 of. And plus, I was like, you know, I should just get 2 of everything, so that way I can sell one and then I can keep one. Yeah. And so that was my second mint. So I got like super, super lucky.
Yeah.
But what happened is that I quickly realized I couldn't keep up with this group. Like, I don't have the resources for it. I was like, I'm going to run out of money really soon. And, like, I don't want to sell some of these because I don't like flipping. You know,
Right.
if I'm going to buy it, I think there's some long-term plan there. I think with Pool Suite, they haven't really disclosed it, but, you know, they have they've done such a good job of just, like, everything that they have touched, everything they have built has been so well designed and so thoughtful that I'm just like, you know what, I trust you as a team.
Yeah.
You're going to execute something amazing.
Yeah.
But I realized I wasn't going to be able to keep up.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And but I was doing all this research. I was working full time.
Yeah.
Going home at night, researching till like 2, 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
Like waking up at 8, going straight to my computer, seeing how everything was performing. Like I was obsessed, and still kind of am. And so I realized that I needed to do something to share what I was doing, to share the research.
Yeah.
I was also struggling heavily with just finding stuff, learning about new mints, learning about NFTs in general, and I didn't find many good resources.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, this is such a long story to get to. You've asked
No,
me
this
one
is
question
great.
so
You're doing
far.
great.
I love it. This is the origin story.
Yeah.
But I realized that there wasn't a lot of good research out there.
Yeah.
Or even just someone saying, "Hey, this is a new mint. Go look at this."
Right.
I've looked at it, and this
Yeah.
is, this is the website, and this is the Twitter handle, and this is the Discord. This is like the consolidated information.
Yeah.
And so on Thanksgiving morning, I woke up, and I'd been thinking about this for the last day or two, but I was like, I can't just start something else. I'm already building a proof, and I just put all this time into the SaaS product, and worked on this API, all this stuff, talked to people, shared all these things. I got a couple paid customers, even though the product was not working, and I'm still going to go back and refund them because I appreciate that they put their faith in me, but they shouldn't have to pay for something that never worked.
Yeah.
But I was like, I can't just go create something else.
Yeah.
But I did.
I did. Yeah.
So I went and bought FutureNFTMints.com.
Yeah.
It was available, and then I was like, I can't tell anyone because I need to go buy the ETH for this, the ENS.
Right.
I need to go buy the Solana address. And Solana, I was like, so I buy the ETH immediately. Boom, great, okay, fine, whatever. I put a little money into that, but it wasn't that much.
Yeah.
Plus, hey, I got 10 grand from the ENS. Fine, let's. We can spread that around a little bit. Still haven't sold it, so I'm taking cash out for this. So, I'm not really justifying this in the right way.
Yeah.
And then I buy my Solana address, which took 3 days for the auction, and then someone started bidding it up like an hour before it closed. I stayed up that Sunday. Yeah, and I'm like, you was like, no! I was so upset. I'm freaking out. I'm like reaching out to everyone in CPG. I'm like, guys, what do I do?
Yeah.
And they're like, just make sure that you have extra tokens. In fact, just getting the tokens, because when I bought my personal Solana, the SNS, it was for USD. USDC, you can buy that. And then on November 17th, they switched it. And you had to use their specific token. But the websites on the SNS don't work for US customers at all. None of them work. And I'm like, what do you do? And so CPG was like, hey, go to Radium. I never would have found this to do the swap. So I get the tokens, I do it. Luckily I bought it. I think I paid twice as much, but it was $40. So I was like, got it. Good, I got it. I got a Twitter handle. So now I have everything that I want.
Yeah.
And I did my first tweet on November 29th. And it was so crappy. It was just a single tweet. And then I basically just iterated every day from there.
Yeah.
It
gets better and better and better and better.
So I feel good kind of where it's at now. I'm just stretched for time.
Yeah.
I had 2 weeks off at the end of the year, and I just worked full time on this. Wasn't even planning to, but I was like, man, I had gotten 300-400 Twitter followers by that point, and I was like, whoa, people actually like this. I'm getting incredible feedback that, oh wow, this research is really helpful. Creating this report. And then I was like, but the reports aren't enough. They say some stuff, but there's all these other things. I put this rating. The rating kind of sucked. I got rid of it. And so, that's that's the long story of kind of the beginning story of Future NFT Mints.
I like it.
It's a the intent for it is that it is an in-depth analysis that's focused on transparency.
Yeah. Right.
I very quickly realized that teams that were not public are the ones that are they're the ones that are most likely to rug you, right? To scam you, because they have no consequence from it.
Right.
I mean, we see all these like anon accounts that are rugging people. We're even seeing influencers who are doing it publicly, and then people are still putting money into it, partly because they probably don't know the history on it.
Yeah. Right.
And at some point, I think these things will catch up with people. But I wanted to put something together that at least had like a little bit more research, that had a little bit more information, that like you go read this, you could be informed, and then you could go do a little bit more research to make sure if it was right or not for you.
Yeah, right.
In fact, the best compliment I got was for the Links DAO Insight Report. I wrote this tweet thread. Mike Dudas, who had just joined CPG Club, retweeted it, and like I got like 200 extra followers just from that. And I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But I had someone was like, Elliot, like I loved the report, because I read it and like it confirmed what I was thinking. I went ahead and I've decided I'm going to buy it. And someone else came up to me and said, Elliot, really appreciated the research report. It was really helpful. It helped me decide not to buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was like, awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
You're
I
really
wanted to be
important,
as like down, middle of the road.
Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you what my bias is.
Right.
For the ones I'm gonna mint, I will tell you that. If I'm excited about it, I will tell you that I'm excited about it. I'll try to tell you why I'm excited about it. But I just hadn't seen something, and also like very clearly, I'm very long-winded. You ask me one question, and I can talk for 20 minutes.
I love it though.
So that's good.
But like going to listen to a podcast or something like that, like I like something that's written.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's like the best medium for me to like quickly observe something.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read it. It takes me 5 minutes to digest it. Great. Boom. I want to go look at something else. Let's go to Discord. Let's see what people are actually saying. Let's go to their website. What's the information they have? And so that's the goal for it is just to become that information resource where you're like, you know what, I can go here. I can get useful information. I can come back. And look at it the next day and hear. Someone said that my take was unbiased the other day for an NFT that I did a research report, and I was like, I don't know if that's true, because I even at the end was like, I'm biased. I'm gonna buy this, so I'm biased. And so I was like, I don't like. It's hard to say that it's unbiased. I do try to be objective, but when I'm doing the research, if I'm like, okay, this sounds really cool, I want to mint this, very clear that's probably going to come across in the way I'm doing the research. And so it's not as objective probably as I had originally wanted at the beginning, but I think it's transparent enough. Where I'm like, hey, like I'm going to buy this, or like, I really like this, and I always try to be critical of everything that I research, right? There's things I don't like, there's things I like.
Right. Well, I'm sure it's completely different than like just the people that are just shilling stuff, right? And they're just like, hey, go buy this, go buy this, go buy this. I mean, you're doing like actual research and quality stuff, as opposed to like a lot of people who are just like kind of like, hey, check out this thing and buy it, right? Yeah. So I think what you're doing is definitely very important.
Yeah, and I think as somebody that is an acolyte of value investing, and people like Ben Graham and Warren Buffett, you've read your fair share of S1s and 10Ks, and you do a lot of research and you investigate a lot before you make a decision on purchasing equities. So like you're trying to create the same kind of value creation in an unregulated market, which that being NFTs, which I think you found kind of your product market fit, and you're seeing validation in your Twitter, and you've grown. So you've grown really quickly. You crossed 1,000 followers recently, which is a big milestone. It's only going to go up from there.
It took me over like 10 years to do it for my personal account. So like 45 days. I was like, okay,
so
people don't like me that much, but they like what I'm writing for Future NFT Mints.
So it's kind of like you're seeing that too. And so it's kind of, I think it'd be interesting to like for people that are listening, for you to kind of explain your methodology behind like how you kind of investigate a new NFT mint and kind of like how you do due diligence there and submit something for people to consume.
Sure. Mints are really interesting. Like I want to talk more about like what is a mint before we go into that research.
Go for it.
Because I think that informs kind of what I look for and why or how I evaluate it. So I actually look at NFTs I think a little differently than other people do. I'm not an accredited investor, and so I haven't been able to write a check into a pre-seed or seed startup. And I view NFTs as kind of like, that's my chance.
Yeah.
I'd mentioned like with the art use case, right? Like I think this is great for artists. I'm really, really excited about the use cases for them. And I think that it's going to help propel. I was watching Tick Tick Boom yesterday, which is the story of Jonathan Larson who wrote Rent. It's directed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, and Andrew Garfield does an amazing job in the role. And I did musical theater when I was like in high school, and I actually interned for a Broadway producer. I was a stage manager for this one-woman show with this actress named Laura Bell Bundy. She was actually one of the stars of Hairspray at the time. Wow. My job was to help her with like 20 costume changes, which as like a 20-year-old guy, like it was a great, great experience. But I mean, and she was amazing. I mean, like, and again, I mean, she like was amazing in that show. And it was at Joe's Pub, which is the Public Theater. So it was just like I've had these like kind of cool experiences in theater, and I was watching this, and here's Jonathan Larson like struggling, and isn't able to raise any money at all. And was just trying to get I just need that $10,000 check. I just need to do this reading, and then we can attract some producers who are going to invest. And I think NFTs kind of changed the game. You can crowdsource some of this information, like some of this money, and you're basically pre-selling a product or service.
You're front-loading some of the value, right?
Exactly. And so that's really what I started looking at this as, is like, hey, we are pre-selling a service, a product, something, and that's what actually really fascinates me about an NFT. Right? You get access to a community that you couldn't have otherwise.
Right.
You can go in there and have these incredible conversations, learn things that you couldn't have learned. And only a few people are going to be able to join that conversation because you have to have the NFT to be able to join. And so that was the part that for me, the light bulb just turned on. Like, that is why NFTs are amazing. Is because they allow you to do something that, and on top of that, they allow you to do this without giving up any equity.
Right.
If you're a creator, you sell this and hey, I'm gonna do this service, I'm gonna do this product. It's not there yet. I'm going to tell you the roadmap. We're going to tell you what we're going to build. And if you give me the money, you buy the NFT, then we'll do that. And then, hey, there's also a royalty. So if you start trading it, then I'm still going to make some revenue. So the NFT also is this revenue generator. And so I look at NFTs very much like pre-seed or seed investments. And so I care the same way that a VC or angel investor is going to look at the team. It's going to look at the product. It's going to look at, are they the right people to build this? Why are they building this? Right? Is there already interest in what they're building? And so when I find a team that's really strong, when I find a product that's awesome or a service that you just can't not have, that's when I get super excited. And so really early on in CPG Club, someone was like, hey, you guys should check out Floor, which is this app that allows you to track your entire portfolio and see what is the total value of your portfolio based on the floor price. Right? Makes sense. And I looked at it and I was like, whatever, and I kind of dismissed it. Next day, a buddy of mine messages me on Twitter. I was like, hey man, have you heard of this? And I was like, what? Funny you should ask. I literally looked at it yesterday. And I hadn't honed my research at the time. So I went and looked at it again. And I realized that I'd missed something. They already had an app. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. You got to pay 0.2 ETH to mint. And I got a little confused. I went on to OpenSea. I thought that, they have a Gen 1 and Gen 2. I thought that I was minting the Gen 1, which was already selling for like 0.3 or 0.4. I was like, oh, it's already profit. Let me, mint. Turned out I was completely wrong. Minted 2. And they were the Gen 2s. which I actually could have gotten them cheaper. I could have bought like 0.16.
Oh, man.
So I was like kicking myself a little bit, but I was like, you know what, whatever. The money went directly to the founder. I minted like number 127, 128. And then I tried the product and I was like, my God, this is insanely good. Incredible. It was it's iOS only, and I loved it. Like, it was a great product. It felt great. I wanted to use it. I was using it 5, 10, 20 times a day since immediately once I got it. And so I got really, really interested in this one. This was like the first one where I was like, oh, like I discovered something kind of cool. There weren't too many people in it.
Yeah.
The Discord was really small at the time. There was like, again, I minted 126, 127, or 127, 128. And so like the Discord didn't have a whole lot of people in it. Everyone who minted the Gen 1, like they weren't too active.
Right.
And the Gen 1 gave you like 3x raffle spots and other, much better benefits.
Right.
And I was just like, my God, I love this. Like, you can only access the app with the NFT. Like, when other people try this, they are going to love it too. Mm-hmm. This is like, it's addicting. Like, it's literally the first app I open in the morning when I wake up. Actually, right now I go to Twitter and then Telegram. It takes me like 20 minutes to get out of bed. List, right? I like boom boom. Yeah. And I don't look at floor anymore because I don't want to get like overexcited. Well, I don't worry too much if it goes down because like the NFTs that have done the best for me, like again, I'm a value investor and I'm like, they're still undervalued. Like floors, I wound up buying 2 of the Gen 1s, 3 of the Gen 2s. I sniped a couple, got them for like. I spent like 1.1 ETH total to buy all.
Oh, nice.
And like now, like a Gen 1 is like 1.5 or something. Mm-hmm. And so like it's done very well, but I'm also just like, but like you haven't seen anything yet.
Right.
Because like
exactly.
Not everyone has even been able to get their hands on it. They don't know what is so amazing about it.
Right.
So I wound up like I cut a video for them. Like they didn't ask. But like I was just like, it's been a while since I've edited a video. I haven't played with After Effects in a while. I was like, I just like, let me play with these tools. It'll be fun. This is a great product. Let me figure it out. So I made a little like marketing video basically for them, and was talked to the founder Chris Mattern multiple times and was just like gushing and obsessed with it. And so we wound up having a few different conversations, and I've been a huge fan of it, still am. They just minted out their Gen 2. It took them a while, and they sold out 1,000 of them, right? So remember, I bought like 127, 128.
Right.
And now they finally did 1,000 just a week or 2 ago. Wow. And they're about to do a Gen 3 so they can get access to more people. And I'm just like, this is it's so amazing. This is the app. I think I didn't want to actually talk about it with Future NFT Mints because I was like, oh my God, I'm like obviously so biased on this one.
Right.
But at some point I was like, you know what? It's still minting. I should do a report on this one.
Yeah. Right.
Because I do like it so much.
Yeah. Right.
Because of some of the other ones that I had done earlier. And I mean, like some of them have done okay, but I was just trying to find something to talk about. Yeah. The first criteria. Wow. So we're 10 minutes into this question, and I'm going to now answer it. What do I look for? So the first thing I look for is the team public? Okay. If the team isn't public, I pretty much am not going to write about it. I did that once a week or so ago with a mint called Metroverse, and it was because it had so many people in their Discord and Twitter. I felt, you know what, I should write about it at least. Yeah. So I did make a little stink about the fact that they aren't doxxed. Yeah. And they are adamantly not going to dox themselves.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Because I think it's really important that you know who you're investing in, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Again, angel investors, VCs, when they are investing pre-product, let alone pre-product market fit, but pre-product, the team is what matters. Yeah. Because they may take that idea and realize, it's not the right thing. But if they have the runway, then they can pivot, they can iterate, they can talk to their customers, find out what problem they really should solve, and build from there. Right. And so the team to me is incredibly important. But I did like the fact that they had done 3-hour-long AMAs. Gotcha. So I was like, you know what? Yeah. Maybe you're being anonymous.
Some transparency.
And but there's there's something here. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And to me, I don't buy the full vision on it. It's a game. I'm not like I don't fully like I'm not a huge gamer.
Yeah.
But I'm still interested in the play to earn economics.
Yep.
But so the team is the first thing I look for. The second thing is utility. What does this let me do?
Right.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that it's not just some pie in the sky vision. I want it to be real utility. I look at the community that's grown around it. When you're minting something, you don't really know who are all the people who are going to buy it, right? You don't have any analytics. You can't go to Dune Analytics and be like, oh, what's the volume of trading?
Yeah.
It hasn't traded yet. You have no idea. And so I want to look at in the Discord, how are people communicating? I joined this one, and I'm not going to mention the name because I am pretty negative on it right now, and I want to give the founders the benefit of the doubt. But the Discord was toxic.
Really?
And at the beginning they had kind of told people, hey, buy this, and you're gonna make thousands of dollars.
Oh.
And then they did all these shady things, and everyone who's in there is all about, don't sell or don't list it. And I'm just like, this should not be what the conversation is focused on.
Right.
You shouldn't be obsessed about the price. Who cares about the price? Let's build something of value. And they're like, oh, hey, go
the price will
spend
fall.
some of this money and market. Buy the floor, sweep the floor. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Don't have them waste the money that we gave them to, build out this roadmap that they had promised. Let them execute their roadmap.
Right.
And so so I learned a lot. That was an early mint for me as well. And I was like, ooh, okay.
Oh, so you did get one of those?
I did.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I still have it, right? Because again, when I buy it, hey, I bought it for a reason, and I want to see that they're able to execute on it. If they don't, that's okay, right?
Yeah.
I have other ones that offset the loss.
Yeah.
I'm okay. It doesn't hurt me.
Yeah. Right.
And also, it's a part of the learning process, right? You can't. You have to have some skin in the game. You have to take a risk.
Yeah.
And while it wasn't a great experience, it has informed my decision making going forward, right? So now when I look at communities, I want to see certain interactions with that community.
Yeah.
I don't want people focused on the price. I don't want them focused on how much money we're gonna make.
Yeah.
To me, that's not how you actually create value. You create value by building something that people want.
Right.
By building something that's special and unique, that fills a gap in the market that doesn't already exist. And that's what all the energy should be focused on.
Yeah.
Right.
And so community is very important. I like perks as well. Utility to me is about what does this let me do? Perks is about what does this give me? Right? So sometimes there's raffles, there's contests. Some of those perks are borderline, probably have some legal gray area.
Yeah.
Just put it delicately.
Yeah.
So some of those I think you do need to be aware that hey, if you go to zero.
Yeah.
And in fact, every single tweet thread that I put out has a disclaimer since pretty much the very beginning of saying look, this isn't financial advice. Do your own research. And I've started saying NFTs may go to zero.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
The SEC could come in.
Yeah.
CFPB. Someone comes in and is like, nope, sorry. This isn't legal anymore.
Yeah. Right.
And then all of a sudden, there's a stampede for the doors. That could happen. I don't think it's realistic.
Right.
I think that a lot of smart people have thought about how do you structure these very well. And it also unlocks this new economic means of transferring value, which we can talk about a little later. And that's the part that really excites me. I guess the last thing that I look at for the mint is I do want to know, is it going to sell out?
Yeah.
I don't really care though, right? Because if there's a good team and there's utility or there's community or there are perks, who cares if it sells out?
Gotcha.
As long as the team has the resources to build, as long as they keep building, it'll probably sell out at some point. Floor didn't sell out.
Yeah.
Remember that that mint I was telling you about? It was 100, 120, 150.
Wow.
And when I aped in, and I was telling people about it, and they're like, I don't know, it's been out for a month and a half, and people just haven't bought the NFT. And I was like, yeah, but they also haven't marketed this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
They haven't told anybody about it, and you try it, and you will learn how amazing it is. That's why I cut the video, because I was like, people need to know how awesome this is. This is an incredible product already. If you were to launch it, it would be the #1 download on the App Store. Like, assuming that there's enough people who are in NFTs who would care. But it would be the number one app in the NFT space, in my opinion. Again, it's so good. Not financial advice. Do research. I'm a huge fan of it, but like I tweeted something out today that like I get really excited about stuff. It doesn't mean I'm bullish on it necessarily. It's just like I think that it does something really cool. Yeah. So I have no idea if these things are going to be profitable or not. It's kind of beside the point. It's like I'm excited for that journey. Yeah. Hopefully I'll do well financially, but like that isn't like to me. If you're just trying to buy this to flip, like to make a buck, like you're not going to go at it with the right values,
right?
And you're probably going to miss incredible opportunities because you bought something and sold it for like pennies on the dollar, even though you made a profit. Mm-hmm. Pennies compared to what it would be worth down the road,
right?
And so I want to go for that ride. I want to be there with that team. I want to like see how they're building and experience everything. And so the communities I'm most active in are the ones that have performed the best. And it's not because I've been involved. It's because the people want to be involved. Yeah. It's because there's something special there, right? CPG Club, like it's very, very small. And Chris and Jamie have done an incredible job of bringing in insanely talented mentors. The Telegram is, I probably have missed 50 messages already, right? Like I wake up and, some of the team who's, in Asia, they're catching up, and they've, posted their own messages and their own responses, and you wake up and okay, great, I need to go read this because there's so many smart people in there,
right?
And no one wants to sell their NFT because it's like, why would you? These are the smartest people that I've been around in a small group. It's it's incredible. Like Floor, like their Discord, my God, there's so much like alpha that's just being discussed. I never used the word alpha until I joined CPG. By the way, never used it. Went to business school, understand it, all that, but it was like I never used that.
Right.
But now I'm like, oh my God, okay, now I get it. You hear about something from people who know directly from the team building it. Or they're very early supporters because they followed someone and whatnot. And these are people who like care. They're passionate about it. That's the people that you want to listen to.
Right.
You don't want to take their advice all the time. I learned that the hard way. Someone in a CPG Club promoted something, and this is like in my first day or so. And I was like, oh yeah, okay, great. Like they said this. I'm just gonna go buy it. And I went and bought it. I didn't really do a lot of research, and it didn't do well. I think it's like maybe it's gone down half or something. But that's another lesson, right? Just because, again, if someone else is excited about it, doesn't mean that you should be.
Right.
You need to go figure out were they excited, and then when you go look at it, are you also excited?
Yeah. Right.
And so, like to me, like this entire thing is, I'm trying to create Future NFT Mints to just show you, hey, this is a way that you can evaluate this, right? Like look at the teams, make sure that you know who you're putting your money with, right? Otherwise, what happens if they leave? Are you going to know who to say, hey, this person took this money from me? Well, you don't know who they are, right? It's just a wallet address,
right?
But that wallet address has been, masked in some way, and all of a sudden there's no paper trail, and you don't know who it is. There's not even a PayPal account. So, the team, community, utility, perks, know what you're buying. And I think a lot of people that hear NFTs are like, oh, hey, if I just put money into this, I'm going to make money.
Right.
And so, and I'm happy that I'm only talking about this 50 minutes in. But one of the things that is very near and dear to my heart is regulatory compliance. I'm a huge nerd. And when I started working in film 10, 15 years ago, I actually wrote the film distribution contracts that we would use.
Oh, wow.
I had a catalog of all 400 or so contracts we had, and so I started learning all the terms and all the clauses and all the things, and I was just like, oh, this contract does not help us. Oh, this is so much template contract. It's so favorable to them. No. So I created our own template contract that was very favorable to us, and I knew all the terms that were going to be useful, and I was like, wow, really paying attention to this is going to be important. I got my Series 7 and 63 at one point, during a misguided period in my early 20s, but I also learned the value of financial regulation. I was working at a brokerage firm during the financial crisis, and so like when everything when Bear Stearns collapsed and everything, and so I understood that if you are not doing things in a proper way, it can be really painful. I worked at a fintech startup, and they were moving fast, right? And they broke some things, and the regulators were like, "Hey, you need to fix this." And we'll just say they didn't do it fast enough. And so regulatory compliance for me, and I wound up doing a ton of compliance there, and trying to figure out how do we get our product in the right, correction. And so when I see this, right, and when I was a kid, right, I had studied the 1929 crash, right, and the Great Depression and everything. And so what I'm seeing with NFTs is that NFTs are it's a huge parallel, right? We're in the 20s, right? It was the 20s back then. We have a pandemic. They had a pandemic, right? We're in a couple of years, hopefully, when everyone gets a vaccine and we're able to all go out and hang out again.
Right.
With all the money that's being made in crypto, it's probably going to be very exuberant and excessive, right? I'm thinking of a Great Gatsby type party. I know someone's going to throw that. But NFTs, I think, are very much like stocks were in the 20s, where they were unregulated, and people were scamming people. They were selling without proper disclosures, without saying who was actually behind it or who was funding it. They were taking money for these sham operations, and that I think. I just see these parallels with NFTs, right? Not everyone is doing that, right? And that's why you got to do your research. You got to find who are the teams that are going to act proper. But there, anytime there's a market that's hot and it's making money, there's always going to be people who come out that aren't going to act in good faith.
Right.
And we saw that in 2017, and I think that we're going to see it again. And I think we're actually going to see regulators come in, and it's going to be. But I don't know if the regulators are going to come in first, or if we are going to have a big crash at some point, and then the regulators are going to come in. Because that's what happened in 29. Regulators came in 1933, 1934, Security Acts, and that's why we have accredited investor laws. Right. All these laws that people are complaining about today were created to protect these small investors from being swindled. That's the real reason. It's not to say, ooh, you need to have this much money and you're the only people who can angel invest. It's to say that, well, if you haven't gotten to this threshold, into you don't have the ability to evaluate this, and maybe it isn't responsible for you to put 10,000, 20,000, your life savings, into this. So I see both sides of it, right? Because they also, they people who aren't able to angel invest, and they have done their research. They do know what they're doing, and they don't have their Series 65, which if you have that, you can kind of get around the accredited investor law. But they aren't able to participate, and so there's some unfairness with that. But that unfairness was created because people were not responsible before the Great Depression. So I think you've asked me only 2 questions, and I have just
You're doing great. You're doing great.
I know, but I'm just
it's you got a lot of passion about this. This is great.
I do. I don't like seeing people get hurt.
Right.
Well,
that's why we're doing this. I mean, that's kind of the same reason why we're doing this, right? It's I've seen projects where people. There's one actually before we started this where Soldier Boy promoted it, and a guy was on there saying, "Dude, I trusted you. I put my life savings in this, everything I had," and they rugged and they left. And it's what the heck? And Soldier Boy, he's off. He just deletes a tweet and keeps moving, right? But that guy, all his money's gone. And it's for us, it's if we do something like this, we can give some transparency for people, right? That's kind of the hope and goal with what we're doing here. So, I love the passions you have for this. It's really kind of cool. And actually having the background that you have, I think is amazing to give you a great perspective on all these projects. When we were doing our NFT, we definitely want to reach out to you and figure out what you think. Because we're kind of working on that right now,
So that's the thing though, is that when I talk to a team, I get excited with them, right? Because oh, now I've met them, I hear what their vision is, and maybe I have some doubts, but now that I've kind of met you, I'm oh, you know what, hopefully they'll be able to figure it out. Now, if there's some clear legal things that you haven't thought about, I think like right now I'm kind of like, let's kind of, we'll see what happens. Right? Who knows if the regulators are going to treat it a certain way.
Yeah.
And because some of mine have done very well, I'm up like maybe 2x, but I put a decent amount in, so I'm like, okay, so like, I'm okay with some losses here, and I do think some of these are undervalued and that they'll do well. So I'm like, okay, I'm willing to take a little bit of risk here and there on things where I'm maybe a little iffy on.
Right.
Which is why I'm like, don't follow what I'm doing. Please, don't, because like my motivations for buying something, while I try to be as transparent and communicate it, like I can't communicate everything.
Right.
I mean, already like you can tell I'm very verbose.
I love it.
Yeah.
Like I'm thinking like a million things, and so like I literally like may think 20 things, but the reason I buy is this one thing, and it's like this small little detail that I mentioned that to me actually was like, that's the reason why I'll buy it.
Right.
Yeah. And so so I always encourage people to do your own research and all that, but more importantly, like do the research so that you know how to evaluate these things. Like get to a place where you're like, this is like I want to buy this because these are the sort of things I understand. Like art, for instance, are NFTs. Like I'm trying to mint an NFT tonight that's like a music one. And look, I've worked in film. I understand the economic models. Even though I've worked in film, I no longer feel like, I know what we should acquire to do well. I will say that I watched It Man in Cannes and was begging that we acquire it. We didn't have the $1 million that they wanted for the film. And It Man, if you haven't seen it, is this incredible movie. It Man was Bruce Lee's master. And they wound up creating a trilogy.
Oh no, I've seen that actually, yeah.
And it's amazing. So I saw that in Cannes in like 2009 or something. And like I had the screener. I was like, guys, we have to get this. We didn't have $1 million to do it. But I was like, this is gonna be awesome. So that's like the one thing where I was like, okay, I think this is gonna do well. But other than that, like I'm not that tastemaker, right? Like I'm not gonna hear a song and be like, ooh, that's the song, right? I'm not a music producer. If I see art, like I can have an appreciation for it, but I have no idea why something is going to sell for $1 million versus $10 versus $100,000. So I wind up steering a little clear of those.
Yeah.
When I will buy it is like the one I'm going to do tonight, is because like I like the team. Like they've created music already. I liked the music when I was doing the write-up for the Insight Report. This is for EQ Keys. I love that they're using like 88. When I was a kid, I did a lot of music stuff, so I immediately knew that's how many keys are on a piano. Yeah. Like I didn't have to look it up. I was like, oh yeah, that's why you chose 88 because of music. Yeah. And then I double checked. I don't even think I double checked with them when I published. I just I had them look at it, but I didn't ask. I didn't ask like, hey, is that correct? Is that why you did it? I didn't ask. And then in the Twitter space, someone asked, and they go, oh yeah, we did it because of the keys on a piano. I was like, thank God that I didn't screw that one up. And so it's just I don't know. That's so I want to support those artists, right? The tick tick boom, right? Like I want to support that next Jonathan Larson. I want to support that person who has that passion and that talent and who's struggling. But it's like, no man, like here I'll put in $500, right? I'll put in $1,000, which for me is real money. Yeah. But hey, I think this guy is going to do something amazing. And if you reward your early supporters with something special that is only we only have 500 seats for the premiere. Hey, you have the NFT. You're all going to the premiere. Yeah. Like whoa. Yeah. Like that's pretty amazing. Yeah. And there's so many ways, and you can continue like benefiting those people, right? Like if you think about it, right? If you were to put buy an NFT for an artist while they're just getting started. Right. And you are able to fund them for like a year, 2 years, and they go make that small short film that goes to Sundance, that does well, that then goes and, they're able to get a distribution deal. Now it's, with like Netflix or someone or Amazon or Apple. But they get that deal and they do that film. They're going to remember those 500 people, those 300 people that gave them money and believed in them when no one else would.
Right, exactly.
And also, like, if you think about, like, when you went to high school or something, there was that one kid who you're like, oh my God, that guy, I wish I could put some money into them. Yeah. Right? I know, like, when I was in high school, there was a couple people who was like, God, I wish that I could buy part of their, like, whatever they're going to do in life. And I feel like that's what an NFT allows.
Yeah.
And so I think, you know, ultimately it's a very personal, you know, like again, this is angel investing. This is like, this is seed, pre-seed. You don't know what the finished product is, but you see something that excites you.
Right.
So yeah, my hope is just to help people come up with their own framework. I'm going to show you kind of what I look at. Sometimes it changes. It's going to evolve. I'm starting to do more quantitative analysis.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to actually talk about how much money they're raising with the NFT mint. There was a mint that they raised $30 million.
Oh, wow.
They didn't really mean to. They were like, hey, we're going to do a Dutch auction.
Wow.
And it's going to start at 1 ETH. And then it can go down to 0.15, which is the lowest that we think that, you know, that we can do this on. And it had so much demand, everyone bought it at an ETH. Wow. And I'm like, you guys just brought in $30 million. And you have an ambitious roadmap. Your website is very well done. You have a huge community, passionate. But do you need $30 million?
Right.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Like when I think of like seed, pre-seed and seed companies, like Klinkle is the one that always comes to mind.
Yeah.
Where the founder got $25 million for this idea that was going to disrupt like paper money. And this was before cryptocurrency. And the founder was like 23, 24, and was just did silly things that, you know, a young guy is going to do. Yeah. Who has all this extra money and doesn't really necessarily know how to spend it responsibly. Yeah. Right. And so I feel like there's a necessity for startups to have some constraints, to not have this insane amount of money. Right. So I prefer the team to only get like a couple million.
Right.
Yeah. And
30's a lot.
So yeah,
that's a lot of money.
And they have like an 8-person team. Granted, I mean, look, now they can go hire people out. They can do all these things. But is that going to be responsible? Because even when you're at a startup, right, and you're scaling, like, you can't go in 20 different directions. You need to be focused. You need to build. Right. And so that's where I think that there are so many parallels with startups, with NFTs and with the teams. It's just a different funding mechanism. You're not giving equity. Yeah. You're giving, you know, hey, you have access to this, right? You can influence the roadmap. You can get, you know, you can use the product before everyone. You can get extra benefits, right? When we do open this up to everyone and we can only give 1,000 people something special, you're part of that 1,000 people.
Right.
Like, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
But raising that much money, and this is what I think, like, people just don't realize it, right? I think that, you know, people are like, oh my God, there's a huge community, huge demand. Yeah, I'll pay an ETH for this. Yeah. But they didn't do the math of being like, oh, it's 30 million. Should this team have 30 million?
Yeah.
Like, do they have a very clear plan of what to do?
Right.
Or even are their ambitions that big? You know.
Well, I mean, this team, this team does have big ambitions, and I'm not mentioning them just because I'm on the fence, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because like I said, their design is great. Mm-hmm. Their community is insane. They've done such a great job with all those pieces, and their team has some great experience. Yeah. And they could execute on some of these things, and they could do incredibly well. It's just that it's hard. Yeah. Just like building a startup is hard.
Right.
Like 90%, 95% fail.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that's just kind of how it is. But what's amazing with NFTs, unlike startups and angel investing and pre-seed and seed, NFTs are liquid. Yeah. You have a market. So if you're like, you know, I'm not necessarily feeling this anymore, or there's some, you know, they deviated from the roadmap. I really liked that they were doing this, and now they pivoted. Right. You know, I don't see it. You could be completely wrong. Yeah. But you still have a way of kind of selling those shares. Whereas at a startup, you know, go try to buy shares in a startup today. Yeah. Right? Like it is not easy. It takes all this paperwork. I left a startup and was trying to sell my shares at some point. Yeah. And they were worth, you know, for me, a lot of money, but they weren't worth enough for someone to go through the legal paperwork of acquiring the shares.
Right. And the secondary market only really wants like startups that are really going to the moon.
Yeah.
I mean, so like finding people in the secondary market for a startup that maybe isn't doing so well, like that's a tougher task, right?
Yeah, 100%. So, gosh, I feel like I had just spoken.
You're great.
I know you're looking at the time, and I don't know.
Well, you ordered food for us.
Yeah, no, and I also have a camera that isn't hooked up to an involumeter, So like they have some weird laws around lithium-ion batteries in high-end DSLR cameras for cinematography.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because if they get too
turns
hot,
off.
we might be up in flames. So so they turn off after 30 minutes by standard.
I have one of those too. I never knew that.
Yeah.
So I knew it turned off, but I thought it was just like, oh, they're saving me memory.
No. So we did our first podcast last week, and we were like, why is it 30 minutes? And it just shut off. Yeah, just completely shut off.
No
indication. And we only had audio.
Oh, that's fine.
And we put up this really ghetto YouTube revision that Ryan edited. And we just kind of put the first 30 minutes, and then the rest was audio. We're just like, all the viewers are kind of like, 20 viewers are like, what happened to the really...
45. We got 45.
Hey, there we go. Hey, look, I think the most I've
Small
gotten on
wins.
one of my Twitter spaces so far is like 25 or 30. So like,
That's awesome.
I know. I'm like, you know what? Like, I have a lot more appreciation for these small audiences. And thank you anyone who watches or listens to these in the early days. And it's probably not going to be polished. Hopefully you've actually listened to this point. I'm sure most people are like, my God, this guy is just like nonstop.
That's a wealth of knowledge. I mean, I'm learning a lot. So I appreciate it.
But how do you find most of these projects? Or do you just what is your process of actually finding these projects?
So it's evolved.
Okay.
Right. So when I first started out, I was just looking for anyone that was talking about any project anywhere.
Gotcha.
And in CPG Club, which was like one of my first main sources of information, they were talking a lot about things that had already minted. Right? I mean, because these are incredibly smart, sophisticated investors. They have more resources than I do. Right? I'm kind of obsessed with mints because I'm like, oh, that's when they're cheap, right? That's when I can afford them.
Right.
And if I can find the right one, then I can catch a ride on that star and be able to then sell it and then buy some more and try it again.
Right.
So to me, mints are what I focus on. But for them, they are looking at they're able to do better value, actual value investing.
Yeah.
Right. Does this already have a good community around it? Yeah. Right. Is it something that have other people started supporting this in a big way?
Yeah.
And so a lot of the projects they were talking about had already minted.
Yeah.
And we're way through it. It's not
The
recording.
phone died. We got the audio, but the phone died.
That's right. It's our promise to the viewers that the podcast gets better and better
every time. It will get better. We promise.
You iterate. These things are gonna screw up.
It's like that first tweet you sent, right?
Oh yeah.
I gotta start somewhere.
For the first 30 days on my that's why I'm like, oh, whatever. Just know to bring it. Keep it charged whenever you're doing it.
Right.
Which oh, don't worry. I've done my fair share. If they so that first tweet.
Yeah.
I set it up, I scheduled it, and a link. The last link on a tweet is what Twitter pulls in as the icon.
Right.
And it was Discord, and it was just Discord's image, and I was like, oh, that's ugly. Click, delete it. So I deleted it on the scheduled tweet. Then it tweets out, and that's what shows up is the icon of Discord, as opposed to talking about what the mint was. And I was just like, ugh. So the next day I added a photo, and that just kept changing. But I did after the first 30 days, I wrote up a tweet thread and actually looked at the evolution. I was oh, on this day I did this, and this day I did that. And this. I'm gonna do it again in 10 days or so when I do the 60-day look back. But this is all. This is what you do.
Yeah.
You put it together. You take that idea. You just jump and try it, and then you're building a plane as you jump out the window.
So I have a quick question. So Ryan and I have been doing a lot of exploration into AI generative art, specifically around NVIDIA Canvas and some other neural nets that we've been looking at that are open sourced around building AI generated images based on styles for which the algo has trained on. So you could build some Thomas Kincaid-esque tower that Ryan built.
Right.
And it runs some number of cycles, and there's a fair amount of a little bit of loss because how many Thomas Kincaid images are there, You don't have that big of a corpus, but
it doesn't look perfect.
It doesn't look perfect, but it definitely captures the style of Thomas Kincaid, and people could kind of appreciate, an artist who has since passed, and his kind of generated art with the best in technology for AI. So do you think there's like some derivation and some room for innovation in the current kind of setup where you have a lot of profile pictures that are taking off? It's kind of a long-winded question, but
yeah. And you said quick question, and I'm like, I don't know that I can give you a quick answer, because as you say, there's so much that actually comes to mind. The first thing is that the first rug, it didn't turn into a rug, because they shut down everything and disappeared before they minted. Was a project that was based on Pablo Picasso's artwork.
Gotcha.
Oh wow!
And they were like, oh, we have all this artwork from the estate, or like from not the estate, from owners of the Picasso paintings, and we have permission to be able to do this. And we have, they said Elon Musk, like they showed this tweet that Elon Musk had tweeted out, and it was like after 19 seconds they took the screenshot. And they're like, Elon Musk said something specifically about their project. It was Picasso. And I was like, oh wow, this sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Right.
So I started researching it. I was like, okay, I'm gonna do an insight report on it. Because at the very beginning, you would ask like, how did I find things?
Right.
I looked wherever I could. I went to all these different calendars. And my main threshold was like, can I find who the team is?
Yeah.
If I could find the team, great, I'm gonna write about you. And so the very first ones that I put out for Future NFT Mints were really not great.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to evaluate. I was just starting out.
Right.
And over time I kind of figured it out. But I was also like, okay, let me just find a team. But I was going to bed at like 2-3 in the morning because I was trying to do all this. I was just trying to find things that I could never find. I could never get ahead. And so I kept looking at different calendars. I had like 3 or 4 that I would look at. I would do like Twitter searches for like December NFT mint.
Yeah.
And then just see who literally in their Twitter handle had December X mint date.
Yeah.
And okay, so then I would go look at them. Oh, do you have a public team? No, you don't. Okay, great. And that was like 90-95% of the things I was looking at. And I'm like, this is exhausting.
Yeah.
Of course, like people are gonna need the research I'm doing because it's a pain in the ass just to do the research.
Right.
And so I got to a place where I started hearing more from other people, right? Like the very beginning, you're just kind of trying to get started. Now I'm like, hey, I'm trying to do this. Tell me if you hear of something.
Right.
I created a Telegram community, which we're going to switch over to Discord. And so people know, oh, have you heard of this mint? Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Oh, it goes onto a list.
Yeah.
And I, check it out. So I have like 15, 20 mints that I'm keeping track of.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm asking for inbound. Someone last night, this woman is doing this like woman-led and focused NFT mint. And I think it's really important that for teams that are from from underrepresented communities, that they get a spotlight.
Yeah.
I will say that
That's
like
great.
the best managers I've ever worked with have all been women, like without a question. And so like I feel like women have to go over so many different barriers to get to the same place that you see men do.
Yeah.
That like when you see a guy and a girl in like the same role, like the one probably is better. Just because it's taken more work for her to get to that same place. Yeah. And I feel that way, with underrepresented communities in general, that they just have these barriers that sometimes they're subconscious, unconscious. People don't intend it, but when you zoom out and look at the numbers, clear as day, right? Like women are getting like a fraction of the percent of funding for startups. It's embarrassing. So this woman reaches out and I'm like, oh, this sounds really interesting. Ask people in the CPG club, hey, are you familiar with? And someone's like, oh yeah, I know her. She's great. And I'm like, perfect. She's going on the list. Yeah, like,
cool.
We'll be talking about her very soon. So now it's like people are kind of coming and reaching out. But so I do this research and I was going back to Picasso. And was really interested. And then I was like, great, I'm going to write my insight report about this. Yeah. And as I did more research, I just started feeling uneasy about it. Something felt off. Yeah. And so I wrote the the insight report, sent it to a couple people, and was like, guys, I don't feel good about this one. I want to give it a C. I really should give it an F. Because the team wasn't public. and all this, but I was like, oh, it's 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, I need to go to bed.
Right.
So I pivoted and decided that I wasn't going to write about, and instead I wrote like, how do you identify, a rug? How do you identify a project that doesn't deserve your trust?
Yeah.
And I wound up coming back. I didn't even name it at the time, and then I checked on it when it was supposed to mint. And on that day or the day before, they're like, "Oh, hey guys, we had this conversation internally, and we decided that we aren't going to mint." Now I had already done all this research, right? And so the Elon Musk tweet was odd. They had this press that was all over their Twitter that was talking about celebrities that had been talking about this and that were planning to invest. They were, Paris Hilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like these, A-list names.
They're all just cameos that they paid them.
No, that's the thing. Is that so? Then I go to the articles and I read the articles, and the articles are the exact same. Different publications, but the exact same language. And I'm like, well, did they just send like a press release? What's going on? And so I started doing some Google searches, found out that they have put these in like 100, 200 different places. Sorry, it's 8 o'clock and there's a mint that's supposed to happen.
Get after it.
And my computer, I think, may have died. We'll see. I may have to borrow your charger.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it did die.
Take it.
I did borrow your charger.
We can take a pause too.
Hey, do you want to stop or?
Yeah. Let's take a little 5 or 10.
We took a quick break. There was a mint that I had to do, so
Successful mint.
we found a moment, and so we're coming back. I'm trying to get to back to the story. Was talking about Picasso, and how there were all these articles that were written about it, and they basically were all coming from the same place. There were basically only 2 of them, and they had been sent to like literally hundreds of sites.
Yeah.
And I heard about this, right, where people could just like pay to play for the most part, right? You pay to get an article that you wrote.
Right.
And so that seemed like that was what was happening here. Yeah. I'll clarify, it wasn't the Picasso estate that they got permission from. They were claiming that they got permission from owners of Picasso paintings, which I didn't understand, IP rights on that. That's not my area. But it's still, it was all a little fishy. And then when I saw these articles, I was like, that's weird. So then I was like, well, let's go search Elon Musk tweets. Can I find Picasso? Like, can I find, because the tweet that they had the picture of said Picasso.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find it. I did a search.
Photoshop tweet.
Yeah, so it could be a Photoshop, any number of ways that it could have been, manufactured. They also said Paris Hilton, Arnold Schwarzenegger, these other celebrities, so I searched them. I was like, just search. I did Google searches just to see did it show up anywhere on the internet,
right.
And it didn't.
Huh.
And so that's when I was like, okay, so this is really weird. So I wound up, so I didn't publish that one, and the last thing that I identified that night was that the people who so when I went to look to see who wrote the article, the first one was just linked to another article.
Yeah.
And that other article was basically the exact same thing. So okay, so that's kind of the source article. And then the person who was listed as the author, I clicked on her bio, and there was no education, so there was no school. It said that she had like a bachelor's of science or a bachelor of finance, or BS in finance, whatever the actual degree is. But it didn't say university. It didn't have a Twitter handle. And when I searched for this person's name, they didn't really show up on the internet.
Interesting.
I did this for another article that also had someone, same thing, no college, no Twitter handle, which is now like kind of currency for all authors. When you write something, you have your Twitter handle.
Yeah. Right.
Or something that links to you.
Yeah.
And then it said that he wrote for these other publications. Now, these are authors, they should have bylines, so if I do a search for their name and that publication, something should show up, and it didn't. So it was like, this is weird. So I took some screenshots of a good amount of this. So then fast forward to when they mint, and they say that they're going to delay it. Oh, actually, sorry, one other thing happened. I didn't know what to do. And so I reached out to a couple different people, and behind the scenes, actually, Chris Messina sends me a message. So Chris Messina, I've been following him for a while, and he was in CPG Club. And so now, hey, he's seeing my name in those chats. So when he sees me tweet this, he's like, hey, so, can you tell me who it was? And I was like, sure, Picasso. And he did a little search, and he was like, yeah, something looks a little off there. And he was the one who said, have you contacted the Picasso estate? And I was like, I didn't even think about that. Like that, good idea. So then I go and look up the Picasso estate, and I send them this clearly I can't do things short. So I wrote a long email to them. I tried to make at the very top, the header was just hey, if you read anything, just read this, and this is what's going on. Yeah. And then I gave them links and some other stuff, and was just hopefully this helps.
Yeah. Right.
And if you have difficulty understanding what I wrote, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to walk you through it, or your lawyers through it. So then fast forward when it's supposed to mint, and I'm just checking on it. I also I asked some questions in the Discord, and I was like, hey guys, does anybody know who the founders are? Yeah. Someone was like, oh yeah, I know who they are, or a friend of mine knows. Okay, cool. Who are you? Yeah. Oh, I'm not going to tell you that. Yeah. So, okay, cool. So you know the founders, but you're not going to say who you are, and you're not going to help me identify who the founders are. You realize that doesn't help clarify anything.
Right.
So, and then they got upset with me because I was asking. In my opinion, these are basic questions, but asking basic questions in my opinion, in Discords that are actually in bad faith, you're immediately going to get branded as spreading FUD, right? Fear, uncertainty, doubt. Mm-hmm. Which is very, very negative, and it's very harshly looked upon. And I was like, whoa, I don't want to get a reputation for doing that, because I'm not doing that. I'm just literally just asking what I think is the most basic question, which is who's the team?
Yeah, you're asking fair and reasonable questions.
And so so it you get that toxic backlash, right? Remember that other one I was talking about? Oh, I'm starting to notice that these Discords where they get very sensitive about very, very basic questions, that you should be a little suspicious. So I backed off. Yeah. And so the day that it was supposed to mint, and they had just made this announcement saying, hey guys, we're pushing it back a month. We had all these conversations internally. We didn't, it was really tough, but we made the decision to push out a month. It's going to be better. Because they were also going to build up this auction platform and other stuff, right? And I was just like, something just sounds off with that. I get it. And then 2 days later, it disappears from my Discord. And I'm like, okay, you know what? They kicked me out. Of course, because 2 weeks ago I asked these questions, and they're like, oh, that guy, we don't want him in there. So I thought nothing about it. Then a day or two later, I was like, oh, you know what? I should write a follow-up and talk about, hey, that they delayed the mint, or let's just keep track on it. So I went and looked I went to their website. Yeah. I got a 404 error.
Oh,
the website no longer existed. What? I then go to their Twitter handle. The Twitter handle no longer exists. The Discord has disappeared.
Oh man!
Remember, because it just really days ago. So they didn't kick me out. They turned the server off. Yeah. They destroyed the website. They got rid of their Twitter. I had taken screenshots though. Of most everything, not their website, but I had screenshots of their Twitter and of the articles and of the journalists. So I wrote a tweet thread about this, and I named it. That's why I'm saying the name now, because on sometime in December I posted this thing about it, and I sent it to Chris. I mean, Chris was so supportive. Honestly, that I can't say enough amazing things about Chris Messina. Mm-hmm. He's given me some really helpful advice. He's read some of my tweet threads. And helped me kind of tweak it, and the one for Picasso was I wrote 40 tweets, and he was very nice. He's like, I think it could be 40% shorter. Or no, it was 20%. He was like, I think it'd be 20%. I was like, I think it'd probably be 40%, because I completely agree. And I rewrote the entire thing and literally went from 40 to 25, which is 40% shorter. And so, so he gave some really good feedback on, hey, stop this meandering path, something that. If I do more of these podcasts, I will have to get better at, obviously. But he, so we talk about it, and so I write this tweet thread this is what happened, this is what I saw, these are the signals, and this is why I said this thing. I wrote that tweet thread. It was about this mint, and these were all the things I saw. I'm mentioning that you asked a question about generative artwork. So that was the first one that pops in mind. Is that they were trying to use, and honestly, I was really interested. I mean, who wouldn't want, this generative art from Pablo Picasso? Yeah. I was interested immediately. Yeah. There's another project. It's called Tria Chromatica. Okay. And I can't remember. I bought a Swayless, and I probably mispronounced that. I don't even know. I can't remember like the story behind it.
Mm-hmm.
It is work that's based on like an abstract painter who was extremely important in the space. Again, I'm not like huge into art history, but I looked at it and I was like, that's just like that's fascinating. I just like, and they were minting something, but I couldn't afford the mint. It was like 0.15, right? So like, this is when I was like, really just dipping my toe into the pond, and I think I had put in like $5,000 or $10,000, which is a lot of money for me.
Right.
So I was like, I can't like, keep putting more in. I did, but I like shouldn't. So I was like, you know what? I'll buy this other one that's like 0.1. Right, and so maybe it was like 0.11 or something. So it was a little less expensive. But what was cool is that you, by buying the NFT, they did a collection of like 222, then 333, and then 444, or maybe it was a 3, 4, and 5. And then they're only doing 4 collections total. And the 4th one is a 6,666 profile picture collection. Gotcha. That all these artists are gonna like hand draw and do all these like really cool things. Now the community manager I'd met, I think through Floor, they had done some partnership where Floor was going to get like whitelist spots for it. So that's how it came on radar, right? So again, going back to communities, right? I learned so much in Floor's like Discord, the token gated Discord. There's a channel for alpha where people are just like, hey, have you heard of this? Or what about this? And then people go back and forth and talk about it. I hosted a couple like Discord spaces where we just like talked on some Sunday nights about like, hey, what are people looking at? Because all this is about, how do you find stuff, right? You talk to people, you engage, right? Doing the research is fine, but like, go talk to someone who has heard something, because that's going to cut through a lot of that research. But the generative art piece, right? Like Trio Chromatica, I think has done a great job with doing that, right? Like they take these art, and like I feel like they are people who are passionate about art and art history and very familiar with the painters. Again, I'm not. I'm a novice, and like I art like actual paintings was like I never wanted to stay in museums for long. And I was like, where my parents were like, oh, let's go to the museum, and I got to travel to some amazing places. And I'm just like, really, we got to spend all this time in a museum?
Yeah.
And even now, like, I have a much better appreciation for it. But, like, I'm on, like, the beginner end of that scale. I'm not anywhere close to someone who's like, take my opinion on this. But True Chromatic, I was like, oh, like, I like what you're doing. It kind of speaks to me. And, like, you guys are taking so much care in this. I would love to just, like, let me buy this NFT, and then I'll get that profile pic. So I think there's something kind of cool about that, right? Where the start of it is like, hey, using AI to kind of take these artists from history who may not be alive anymore. I love Thomas Kincaid, actually. I know it's kind of like generic, but like my parents gave me one. I think when I went to college or something, or someone gifted it to me. And I actually like kept it. I think I still have it. I think I have one hanging in my office. It's a small little thing, but it's like so serene. It's like this little house on like a little pond. It's honestly like Thanos is like.
Exactly.
He's like
inner light, right?
So when I watched that part with Thanos, I'm like, man, I like dang. Like you and I both want to go to like the same place. Like I don't want to kill half humanity or the galaxy. But I would like to have a serene place. Walden, Thoreau. So like going back to nature and all that stuff. So like it speaks to. So I like landscapes are actually like the thing of art that I love the most. Like I'll go to an art gallery and I'll just like stare at a landscape. It's just like beautiful and serene, sunset, whatever. Like that for me is like okay, I love that. So I could see like Thomas Kincaid. Like I would actually probably want to look at that. Whereas other people are like it's boring. Like it's just landscape. It's like it's not what I think people who really know their shit like are like this is the stuff. But for me, it's what I like. And I think that that's the great thing about art is what do you like, what speaks to you, and that does speak to you. So I'm very interested in it. But there's all this like the question about IP, right? Who owns like that actual artwork? Some of it's in the public domain, some of it's not. And so I think we have a lot of legal aspects in NFTs that have to get settled, and there's going to be court cases, and there's going to be lawsuits, and all this stuff. Like Miramax right now is suing Quentin Tarantino for the clips that he's created into NFTs and has sold. And I think it's going to be really interesting, like what happens there, because there's going to be precedent. I think, and Tarantino's going forward with it, right? He's going to push forward, and he's going to fight that court case and
set some precedent. Right?
Yeah, I mean, one way or the other, right? We don't know what's going to happen, and that I think is like the interesting part, and that's not the area that I feel comfortable playing in, right? Because I just don't understand it,
right?
And like I minted a non-fungible Olive Garden at $30, and I bought 3 of them because it was like, hey, this is kind of funny, and like everyone in like CBG Club, right? They heard about it. Hey, look at this. Oh, it's kind of funny. And I wasn't gonna do it, and then it saw like step number 7, and they're like, we're gonna do a reverse, like a leverage buyout, LBO of Darden, and I was just like, okay, that's really really funny.
Yeah.
But like, there's like a 0.001 chance that maybe you do that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, you know what? Fine, for $30, I'll get 3 of them. Yeah. I wound up getting a Round Rock one, a Lubbock one, and then I minted some random other one, which this guy did a pseudo swap with me. I still need to like thank him formally. What's his name? I found him on Twitter. I found him and was like, hey man, like you have the one in my hometown. Can I swap with you? Yeah. And it's Temple, Texas. Yeah. So like, who cares about Temple, Texas? And I grew up there, so yeah. But then Olive Garden sent a cease and desist, right? A DCMA, DMCA, Digital Millennium Copyright Act, against. I mean, again, like Olive Garden, like it's not a generic term. It's not like Kleenex, right? Like when you say Olive Garden, you mean one thing and one thing only. So like, we're gonna see some really interesting areas of law. Yeah. And I don't know what's going to happen there, right? OpenSea decided to delist them, and they're doing what they think is right. And so like there's so much complexity here. Yeah. It's hard to like, I think, take a firm side, especially because this again is not the area I want to play in. Yeah. So I think like the art and how you create these generative pieces of artists is sensitive. Yeah. And the other part, and this is the part that I think upsets artists the most, right? Because it's really interesting. There's a big divide in the art community as to what NFTs represent and are they good. And I think one thing is that like when I describe NFTs to people, and I get like really excited and animated, right? Yeah. And so people are like, oh, okay, like now I'm excited. Yeah. I'm like, yes, I love that you're taking my energy. Yeah. But the other part is that like I try to explain it in a way that makes sense. Yeah. Right. And so I think a lot of times like people like they're hearing things like, oh, like there's a ton of energy that's being used, and so if you buy NFTs, then you're destroying the environment, and so if you value climate change or that's a political position that you have, then how can you be supportive of NFTs? Yeah. And my counter argument to that is that you are 100% right. Mm-hmm. Cryptocurrencies today consume too much energy. Right. And that is a known problem. Yep. Like in the crypto community, like we know, right? Like I have doubts about Bitcoin right now. Yeah. I haven't seen any big changes to how it's being structured. Yeah. Right. Ethereum is moving to a proof of stake, which is supposed to consume less energy, and it's supposed to, there's all these other benefits. I'm not technical enough to really give all the details on that. Other people are smarter. Listen to them. But there's this concept of L2s, right, that sit on top of Ethereum, right? Ethereum has these high gas fees because it's expensive to mine an Ethereum block. Mm-hmm. And so, you use these L2s, which are intended to be the transaction layers that are supposed to be less expensive. And I learned today, thank you to Ethereum Austin, this group I'm in, they corrected me. I was like, oh, Polygon, it's an L2. And they're like, no, it's a sidechain. And I was like, what? I was like, no, like I keep reading everywhere it's an L2, and they're like, no, and these people know what they're talking about. Right. And they sent an article, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna shut up because I really don't understand this that well. And they're like, yeah, but it wants to be an L2, but it's not there yet. But the point is that we know crypto consumes too much energy. Yeah. Or most of them do, but we're working to fix it. Right. And the same thing is true if you think back to the first computer, right? The first computer occupied an entire fucking floor. Yeah. like IBM, I think the founder of IBM was like, oh, I see a world where only like 5 computers exist or something, right? Like it's some crazy number. So like to criticize a technology for what it is in its infancy compared to where it could be.
Yeah.
To me, I think it's a little short-sighted. I don't disagree. I think Bitcoin has some inherent issues, and I hope that they fix it, quite frankly, right? Because like Bitcoin is looked at as the gold standard for cryptocurrencies. It's where a lot of institutional investors have kind of invested, but Ethereum, because of smart contracts, right? Yeah. That's like, again, that's what I was most drawn to, and like, so I feel like it's just much more useful. I still hold my Bitcoin. I don't know what's going to happen, so we'll see. But so that argument to me is like, okay, yeah, like I hear it, but people are trying to solve it. And so I trust that someone is going to do that, and they're going to make a lot of money by solving that problem. It's an important problem.
It's also interesting because it generates a lot of economic waste. And in a prior life, I worked at Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is one of the lesser known cloud players in this giant cloud infrastructure war. Oracle has 40, almost 50 data centers across the globe now, each of which cost a couple billion. They're generating, billions of dollars in revenue, and in talks with a lot of the fraud folks, they were pegging Bitcoin mining operations at 2 to 3%. So you can think about the hundreds and millions of dollars that people are taking advantage of all these cloud infrastructure server compute, GPU compute workloads to mine Bitcoin, taking away from startups and other people that need
that. Well, it's the free tiers, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not the paid tiers, it's the free tiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still, it's generating hundreds of millions of dollars in economic waste.
But like we can also look at like the early days of the internet, right? Yeah. Where a lot of money was invested to pay for infrastructure, and that was more or less, quote unquote wasted. Yeah. But it wasn't, right? Yeah. It funded the people who were going to try to work on those innovations. It allowed them to actually operate. Like the challenge that we're at right now is that what does it take to get to the next level of technology? Yeah. Right. And there are costs associated with it, and the question is are you willing to pay those costs? Yeah. The other part, though, for artists that I think is the more critical piece, and I empathize with them substantially for this specific point, which is that someone could take their art and then try to sell it as an NFT. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is the problem with blockchain right now, and it's a known problem, and I'm hoping that at some point we find a solution for it, but I don't know if we will. Is that there is no one to help you if something goes wrong. Yeah. Right? So if someone takes your artwork, right, you have to go, you have to plead your case to OpenSea and hope that they will take action on it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's a whack-a-mole situation, right? So if you're an artist, you don't have the resources, you're not Darden. You don't have lawyers who are able to, make a very, articulate argument and put weight behind it, right? You're, just by yourself, probably trying just to survive. Yeah. And so I empathize with artists who are struggling and who feel that, NFTs are stealing from them in some regards. My counter to it is that the whole thing about NFTs is that you can trace the origin. And if you are the artist, go mint your own NFT and then give benefits to those people who have only your NFT. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the people who bought the knockoffs. Those are the ones that, they won't get these special benefits. Right. They won't be able to go to your gallery opening. They won't be able to buy your next painting. Right? You don't get any royalties from it either. Right? So that you have no incentive to add more value to those NFTs. Right. So I think artists, there are ways to get around it, but it's hard, right?
Yeah. We talked to a lot of artists in Austin, and a lot of them had trouble compartmentalizing being a traditional artist and understanding Web3 and what is NFT minting.
Yeah. A lot of them were interested though, and they didn't understand the tech.
But the tech is so complex. Yeah. Excuse me, I feel like I'm fairly technical, and my first experience, I said here, I spent $500 on it. Yeah. And $500 is a lot of money.
Yeah.
But I'm fortunate I can pay it, and it's not gonna give me issues.
Right.
But like $500 is like means different things to different people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the right now the entire crypto space, the NFT space is largely confined to people of privilege.
Yeah.
Right? Like you have to have money to play in this sandbox, right? Like I feel like I'm barely able to afford it. And that's why I started Future NFT Mints, because I knew at some point I was going to run out of money. So like, let me just create something with what I'm doing, because I want to stay involved and I want to stay interested. And hey, maybe someone will pay me. I have a Future NFT Mints.eth if anyone wants to send me some ETH. I haven't asked for that yet, but I've been thinking about it.
I'm kind of imagining a world where you're kind of like the Motley Fool of like NFT Mints. And you get like a couple thousand subscribers, and like people are willing to pay for that knowledge and that due diligence.
It's something that there's some things in the works. I'm working on a Genesis NFT to
I saw that,
potentially do something with that. So
that's awesome.
When is that launching? When are you doing that?
So I don't want to put a date on it. This past weekend I did a hackathon.
Cool.
And actually, before we talk about this, let me wrap up on the artist thing.
Oh yeah,
no, it's okay. This is like where we should be going, but I want to go back to it because the technology is hard.
Yeah.
It's inaccessible, and that is the part that I think we as technologists, we need better designers. We need better communicators to be able to simplify this, right? The process that I went through to buy my ENS should not be what everyone goes through.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like I'm fairly technically capable, and I had difficulty with it. I didn't understand what I was doing, and I spent an extra $150 that I didn't have to spend.
Yeah.
Like that, for me, okay, fine, whatever. But for mass adoption, no. Unacceptable.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
And we know that this is a problem.
Yeah.
And so right now where we are is that we have this like very, very raw technology, right? It's like computers in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
If you watch War Games, I try to describe this to people. Like, have you seen War Games, that Matthew Broderick movie where he like, starts like a thermonuclear war? And he's like he's like hacking into the school and changing grades for this girl that he thinks is cute. I mean, I watched this like a year ago. I love watching these sort of movies. And but like you couldn't do that. He like connects to the internet in that movie. This is the 80s, right?
Yeah, right.
And you're watching this, you're like, I don't get that. Like he takes the phone line, puts it on this little thing. It does this connection. I still don't even understand that, quite frankly, right? So that was so inaccessible to people during that time, and it was only accessible to a very few. That's where we are today, right?
Right. Yeah.
Technology is only accessible to a few people, and so. Like it's good to try to educate people, but it's also we have to be realistic about like how far are we able to meet them, and we are not meeting them where they are.
Right.
We're asking them to come to us too much, and so that's where that gulf is created. And so naturally, there's friction. Oh, people who have means can do this, right? Only people who are these tech nerds, right? I'm a tech nerd, so I for all of you who may be offended by that, I apologize, but it's weird if I talk to people who are do jobs that are not in tech, and I'm like I start doing just a little bit of jargon, and they're just like, what are you talking about? You realize very quickly that you're in your own bubble, or you're in your own bubble. So I empathize with the artists, and I'm hopeful that the other artists are able to reach out to their own community, and help onboard them. There's this amazing artist, Jesus Martinez. He's so young, and he is like so wise, and he's amazing. Probably one of the nicest people that I've met, and I met him through CPG Club. Cool. And he has this mission to try to onboard like all these artists in the next year to like create their own art on NFTs and to become like able to sustain themselves with their NFTs. Which I think is reasonable, right? Because like the great thing for artists is that you can get a royalty after this, right? So if you sell a painting today for $100, you get $100 to the artist. If that person who bought it sells it for $10,000, you as the artist get nothing.
Yeah, right.
If then that $10,000 is sold for $1 million, you as the artist get nothing again.
Right.
But with an NFT, you sell it for $100, great, you get $100. Yeah. If that is then sold for $10,000, you get another $100, or sorry, you get $1,000 if you set a 10% royalty. And then if that gets sold for $1 million, you get $100,000.
Right.
So we're comparing $100 versus $110,000 or $110 and $100. So like the economics, I think, is very favorable to artists. I think it like helps continue to allow artists and others to benefit from the things that they have created.
Right.
So there's a ton of value there. We'll switch gears. The Genesis NFT that I'm like right now ideating and trying to put together. It basically would fund operations for Future NFT Mints. It's small, right? I'm looking at 300. I'm trying to give out 200 allow list spots to community members that I think would make a good community. Quite frankly, I want people who want to be active and who want to engage and talk and share.
Right.
And so I'm allowing certain communities that they can all join the allow list. And I use the term allow list to try to be more inclusive, right? Whitelist. There's all these kind of historical components to that. And look, I'm a white guy. I'm Jewish, so there are I'm Hispanic as well, but I'm outwardly white. And while I have had my own experiences, it is not the same as someone who is a minority or a woman. And so I think it's important that when you're in that position of privilege, that you should at least acknowledge that and try to be the person who speaks for those other communities, because when they speak, sometimes they aren't listened to.
And that's been the big thing actually in a lot of different cybersecurity products that have transitioned from like whitelist being like a known good IPv6, IPv4 address that could be blocked at a network firewall versus a blacklist, which is like something associated as like some malicious entity, like usually an IP address, some known bad domain that is blocked on entry. So you're not the only one thinking about that, and a lot of people are making those changes in real time. So
and I mean what I love about Web3 is that it's such an inclusive community. Like people really do care. So I have an allow list, and there's going to be certain communities who I want to be a part of it. It's very small, and the privileges will be that there's some utility, right? You'll get the insight reports early, especially if I'm able to do it full time. Like I'll be able to get a couple days ahead, as opposed to like tonight I still have to write the one for tomorrow. So like I'm still not there. Yesterday I was like, oh great, I hit 1,000 followers, so I'll just like do something for that. So that meant that I didn't have to go do the hour of research to put the insight report together. I didn't have to spend another hour writing out the tweet thread. Usually takes about 2, maybe 3 hours to do all of that. Like I feel like I'm pretty productive. I can code, I can edit video, I can write these analyses and all this stuff. And so I built out so much stuff in that 2 weeks that I was off, that I'm like, look, let me just do this full time, and I'll start just pounding out like work and things that I think are going to be useful, and things I think other people, at least from the feedback so far, that they will also find useful. And this past weekend I did the ETH Global Hackathon to build out a mint page. So I actually was able to mint an NFT over the weekend on Rigby. I could have done it on Polygon or Ethereum, but I didn't want to spend any money. I knew I could have done it for free on Polygon and stuff. So I'm trying to get the stuff built, because I don't have any money to go pay someone to do this for me. So I'll be putting that together. I don't know, like we'll see. I work a full-time job, so please don't tell them. My direct report today was like, or one of them was like, hey, I saw that you just got 1,000 followers, and I was like, okay, so you also saw like the Genesis NFT thing, where I was like, hopefully I'll be able to do this full time. And I was like, oh, okay, so like we won't talk about that.
You're not the only one though.
I know.
There's plenty of project contributors that work full-time jobs that are kind of like, I actually want to stay anonymous because like I don't want to be fired.
I know.
And that's like one of the only, I feel like that's one of the like legitimate use cases as to why you'd stay anonymous as like a project contributor.
I don't disagree with that, and I hope I didn't say anything on this podcast that's going to get me canceled or get people upset with me. I don't think I did.
No.
I only dropped one F-bomb.
No.
I only said shit once.
There's always
twice now.
There's always
I was saying a lot of F-bombs on the last one on accident. I think you're okay.
There's always a few F-bombs.
Yeah.
So I think with that, I mean we've been rolling a long time.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Let's eat some food and call it a night because you've
Yeah.
got other
That was
shit to
good.
do. I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you did excellent. You did excellent, Elliot. Excellent.
Yeah,
That's
we
good.
appreciate your
Yeah,
time.
thanks for coming.
And for people that are listening, how can they find you? How can they contribute to what you're doing?
Probably the best way is to find Future NFT Mints on Twitter. So it's just Future NFT Mints. From there, you'll find the website, which is futurenftmints.com. Find us in those two places. DMs are open. You'll find my personal handle there as well if you want to learn a little information about me. Because again, docs teams are important to me. So figured I got to put myself out there, even though I feel a little uncomfortable about it. It's just kind of the world that we live in. So
Maybe a Patreon coming soon.
I mean, I honestly didn't think about that. Maybe. I did not think about
something.
I've been like, the NFT mint. If I just do that, then
No. You got recurring ARR revenue you're missing out on.
Gosh,
I'd pay for that.
Wow. Well, thank you.
This
was fun. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Yeah, this has been great.
Let's cut it.
All right.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Sphere DAO and online at spheredao.finance. Check back weekly for new episodes, and for additional content, check us out on Medium. Until next time, keep hodling.